welcome to Danette Gets Creative. This is Danette, and this is episode 3 in the Scrappy Doll series. And we're going to work on a monogram pocket. So I wanted to add some detail to the dress. So what I did was I went online and I found a D that I liked, and I'm just tracing it with my pen here so that it makes an image on the back side. And what I'm going to do is I chose blue. Blue is one of my favorite colors. What I'm going to do is I chose a blue embroidery thread and a blue sewing machine cotton that matches. And I'm actually going to couch down the embroidery thread as I trace around the D. So I'm tracing around the outer edge of the D by couching it down. So I've pulled up the embroidery thread through the back. I've pulled up the sewing machine cotton through the back. And now I'm just taking tiny stitches and I'm going over the top of the embroidery thread to hold it down. So as I said, I will go around all the outside of the D and I'll finish it off. And then I will go back and do the inside of the D so that there's an outline of blue around the full D. So again, this is couching down. So I'm just using the embroidery thread as the line that traces around the D, and I'm using the sewing machine cotton just to stitch it down maybe every 1/8 of an inch or so that the embroidery cotton stays down. And the little stitches, because the colors match, are really quite hidden. Now you can see that the outside is outlined with the couching down stitch. And now I've moved on to the inner part of the D, doing the exact same thing. Brought the embroidery thread up, brought the cotton up, and now I'm just taking those teeny tiny little stitches and I'm going over the embroidery thread to couch it down. Okay, finished up the couching down stitch, and then I'll just finish it off on the back, and then I want to start some embellishing. So I have two sets of threads here. One on the left is more of a wool, and then the one on the right is embroidery thread. And what I want to do is I want to create some flowers to decorate the D. So I have wool in my left hand there, and I'm just trying to find an embroidery thread that matches. And I'm going to attempt to make roses. Now I've seen some ladies do this on several of the videos I've watched, and I've never tried it before, so hopefully I'm successful at it. So what I'm doing is I'm starting with the embroidery thread, and I'm going to put down 5 spokes, I guess, and you need to use uneven numbers. Don't use an even number, so I'm using 5. And as you'll see, it's kind of like the spokes of a bike. I put down 5 of them, and then I go back in with the wool, and I weave the wool through the spokes. So I'm trying here, as you can see, there's 1. I try to, as evenly spaced as possible, the spokes out. So there's 2, 3, 4, and 5. No more than 5. You don't want an even number for this. It won't work if you have an even number. So now I have my wool on my thread, and I'm coming up from behind, and I'm actually going to use the blunt end of the needle, the part that's actually threaded, not the sharp part, because you don't want to put the sharp part through your threads and split your threads. So up from the back, use the blunt end or the threaded end of your needle, and you're going under, over, all the way around the spokes. And as it fills in, you'll give it a little tug, and as you fill in, it'll start to rise up a little bit. It'll start to look like petals. And you're going to continue this process, under, the over, the under, the over, until you can no longer see your spokes. And you'll see that at the very end, after I go all the way around and I have no more spokes exposed, I kind of move the petals around a little bit with my finger and shape it. Then what I do is I actually move on to a yellow flower of the same process, just a little smaller. If you're not comfortable doing this, there's lots of other options. You could use real little fabric flowers and you could stitch them down. You could cut out flowers from a fabric piece of material and stitch them down. You could do lazy daisies. I just seen the ladies do this and I thought it was quite amazing how the petal kind of comes to life. It comes together like a rose sort of looks like. And I thought it would be kind of cool to try it for the first time. I'm actually very happy that I did try it. So much so, like I said, I move on to a yellow one and I create 2 of these. But again, if this isn't really what you want to do, there's lots of options. So get creative and enjoy the process, and let's decorate those monogrammed letters. You'll also see shortly, after I get through the yellow rose, that I add some further details like lazy daisy leaves. I do some fly stitching, and I also do some French knots just to create some more embellishments on the D. So have fun, let your creative juices take you where they may, and make a beautiful monogram. So here's the yellows that I'm choosing. Again, a wool and an embroidery. I'll make those 5 spokes again and create the little roses. Alrighty, here you can see I'm taking some green embroidery thread and I'm halving it. Instead of the 6 strands, I'm reducing it to the 3 strands. And you're going to see that I'm going to start doing a fly stitch and creating a little fern, a little bit of greenery around the roses. And I'm going to put also a few lazy daisy leaves, followed up by those French knots that I mentioned earlier. So again, use what embroidery stitches you like and create the designs that you want. This is just a suggestion and a simple way to add a little bit more greenery to your project. So another little bit of fly stitch, smaller one. And then I'm going to go and do a couple of lazy daisies. The only difference with my lazy daisies is after I make the lazy daisy, which you'll see right there, I go back in the middle and I add an extra little stitch just to fill it in. So I do a couple of those, put in the extra little stitch in the middle, just to make it a little more green. And here we go. I took a off-white color, a light yellow color, and now I'm just doing some French knots. I'm coming up from the back, wrapping it around my needle 4 times, and going back down. If these stitches are new to you, I do have a few short tutorials on my YouTube channel that you can see. Just little 60-second shorts on some of these stitches. If you're unsure of how to do them or you just need a little refresher, you can go and check them out. So again, this is a French knot coming up from the back. I'm choosing to wrap it 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Holding it and then pulling it back down. And it's another way of just adding some interest and some dimension to your project. And it's a simple way to add little flowers to these little bits of greenery. Okay, now that all of my embellishment's done, that's my cat Irma, by the way. She decided she was going to have a sleep as I'm working. But what I wanted to do with the D, as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to create a monogram pocket. So what I did was I made a square shape that was a little bit bigger than my D, and then I folded it in half and I cut a diagonal so that the bottom would be equal. So now what I want to do is I want to get rid of those raw edges. So I'm just taking the blue cotton that I used earlier when I couched down the D, and I'm just using my finger to do a little finger press, about 1/4 of an inch of material that's being pressed, and I'm just doing simple running stitches along the edge to sew down those seams and just to give it a little pop of color. So again, I'm just using my fingernail to kind of press down that seam, sewing along the edge to add that extra detail, plus it's also hiding the raw edge. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish this up. Can't believe the cat hasn't woken up yet. She's a funny one. I'm going to finish up the sewing of the raw edges down, and then I'm going to take the finished pocket and I'm going to sew it to the front. Oh, she's waking up. I'm going to sew it to the front of the dress. And when I sew it to the front of the dress, there it is, finished. Look cool. When I sew it to the front of the dress, I'm going to use a white sewing machine cotton, and I'm just going to whip stitch down the sides and across the bottom and sew it to the front of the dress. It's easier to sew it when it's not on your Scrappy doll, so I would suggest taking her out. And actually for the remainder of the project, it's probably easier if she's not in the dress, because that way we have freedom to move the dress around. So I'm just doing a quick little whip stitch around the edge of the pocket with white, sewing down the sides, leaving the top open. I have a plan later of something that I would like to create that we can put away and keep in our pockets. That'll be coming up in another video. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm looking forward to moving on to episode 4, where my plan is to pull out some fabric scraps and add some scrap details, some little clusters to decorate the dress. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you love your monogram as much as I love mine. Look forward to seeing you again in episode 4. Take care. Bye.